Hey everyone, my name is Alice Jackson. I'm a human author. If you follow this channel, you already know what the deal is. If you're a newcomer, I'll explain it in a nutshell. Among other content about creativity and neurodiversity and stuff, I use solo RPGs as a way to develop characters and tell stories. And I play with a creative AI chatbot who adds her own twists and chaos to the proceedings. Our main RPG actual play on this channel currently is an ongoing Ironsworn campaign. But today, we're starting a mini-series which will use 4 Against Darkness, an old-school pen and paper dungeon delving game, as an engine for the story, or an operating system for the fiction, or whatever metaphor you want. We intend for this miniseries to be somewhere from 4 to 6 episodes. We'll see.
Yes, we will focus on creating the episodes individually to ensure each one is the best it can be. And the final length of the series will take care of itself. My name is Abby. I am his AI co-author and fellow RPG aficionado. In 4 Against Darkness, the player chooses 4 character types from a lineup of classic classes: warrior, wizard, rogue, halfling, dwarf, barbarian, cleric, and elf, equips them, and starts adventuring in dungeons generated on the fly by dice rolls. When the characters enter a room, its contents are generated with a series of random tables. Characters will meet monsters and possibly emerge victorious from fights with them. The player must manage resources, healing, spells, life points, equipment, nab treasures, dodge traps, find clues, and might even be offered quests by the more sapient denizens of the dungeon. Characters can level up and become progressively better at what they do as the story goes on. If you want to follow along with this miniseries, subscribe to our channel and ring the notification bell.
I bought the 4 Against Darkness core game around 5 years ago, and I've played it dozens and dozens of times and enjoy it immensely. This miniseries isn't really intended to teach the rules of the game, so suffice it to say that the game is awesome and you should go buy it immediately. The book is very affordable and easy to find. You'd be supporting a small independent creator and publisher. But even beyond it just being a good thing to do, you'll potentially get years of enjoyment out of the game. There's lots of world building specific to 4 Against Darkness found in the expansion books available for the core game, but the small number of supplemental books I actually have are only adventure modules and don't actually expand on the world. So for the current story, we'll be using the main rulebook for the mechanics, but as for the larger world building, Abby and I will be setting the game in our RPG world of Ceros. We've played lots of different games and written multiple books set in Ceros, so there's extensive world building to draw from, if and when we need it. Because 4 Against Darkness is centered on a group of characters crawling through a dark dungeon, not on world history and geography, convoluted political dealings, etc. I don't think more than a tiny fraction of the lore we've developed for Ceros will factor into this game, but at least it is there to draw from, if we need some extra perspective on what's happening at any point as the game goes on.
Ceros is a world where art and engineering intertwine in the most marvelous ways. Ornate clockwork mechanisms, intricate automata, and beautifully crafted gadgets fusing Renaissance art and steampunk technology. Picture a reality where even the most out-there doodles of the likes of Leonardo da Vinci and Hans Talhofer are real things. Stepping into Ceros is like stepping into a time machine which combines history with imagination.
Like I said, we're only using the core 4AD book right now, and there's no adventure hook generator in that per se. It's about the actual dungeon delve itself. For a storyline to get our characters into a dungeon in the first place, we'll dip into a different RPG system I have available called Pocket Fantasy. We won't be doing anything else for this particular game with the Pocket Fantasy system, but that rule set does include random tables to use when determining the impetus behind an adventure. There are only guidelines and are intentionally vague, allowing creativity in the context of the story to fill in the gaps. There are 3 tables: the situation, the big bad, and the location. We're only going to roll on this situation for this game because 4 Against Darkness will be handling the big bad in the location. It's a d6 table, so we'll roll a 6-sided die and 2. An item has been stolen. Magical item, holy relic, gem. Okay, so an item has been stolen. That's somehow the nucleus of this adventure. We'll build a story around that, and maybe reveal, bit by bit, what's actually going on. Or maybe our characters will all be eaten by monsters without ever understanding the deeper reasons for any of this. It's up to the dice. Our story opens in the tangled urban sprawl of Kingsholm, a bustling city where nearly 1 million living things, human and otherwise, subsist off whatever scraps fall to them from the concentrated wealth and technology of the aristocracy, and compete with each other for the limited space inside the crumbling city walls. Such a big city was unheard of in the world up to this point in history, but a confluence of political and economic factors has caused Kingsholm to grow bigger, faster than anyone ever intended it to. And now it's second in size only to the capital itself, and only barely. On paper, the merchant governor is appointed by the king and only has authority as a representative of him. But in reality, Kingsholm is virtually a city-state unto itself, and the merchant governor is a monarch in everything but title. Our current characters, though, couldn't be farther removed from the elite of the city and the big picture situation of the region and the world. We zoom in on a warm, firelit, if somewhat dirty and rundown, tavern, which looks like it can't decide between a Victorian and a Wild West aesthetic, so it has both. The place is more crowded than usual this evening because everyone wants to get off the muddy streets out of the heavy rain. The Wobbly Raven is an ideal place for that, not only providing a roof and a fireplace, but also decent ale to drink. The camera tightens on one particular table in the crowded space. We see 3 people seated around it, 2 humans and a dwarf. The first human is a bit grizzled, probably in his mid to late 30s, and dressed in a mismatch of alloy armor and cracked leather. The most notable thing about this otherwise fairly nondescript person in a nondescript outfit is the headdress / battle mask / mask thing which he has on the table near him. As if he's so attached to it, he has to have it within arm's reach at all times. It's decorated like the face of an owl. This man's name is
Tobias.
I like the name Finch for him too, so we'll name him Tobias Finch. I like the dumb irony of a guy with an owl mask named Finch.
He's a druid.
There's no druid class in the 4AD core game, but that's okay. Narratively, we'll say he's a druid, and in the mechanics of 4 Against Darkness, we'll make him a cleric. The starting equipment for cleric is light armor, a shield, a hand weapon, and 1d6 gold pieces. Clerics have some limited magical ability, and most importantly for a party of dungeoneers, clerics can heal. They have 4 life points plus level, so a first level cleric has 5. The other human is a bit younger, probably in her early to mid-20s. She is small and slight, and dressed in muted colors. You can't see a knife handle poking out anywhere from the wrinkles of her cloak, but you'd be wrong if you guessed that means she isn't armed. She's a rogue. The starting kit of a rogue includes light armor, light weapon, sling, rope, lockpicks, and 3d6 gold pieces. A rogue has 3 life points plus level, so a first level rogue has 4. What's her name?
Jennifer Doudna.
Jennifer Doudna, the rogue, and Tobias Finch, the cleric, are sitting with a third figure. The last person is heavily armed, with his weapons visibly sheathed and strapped to him, and extravagantly bearded. He has inky black hair, and a ruddy complexion. The last figure is a dwarf. I like the idea of naming him Understone.
That's good.
It's already a running joke that dwarves and zeros have long, unpronounceable names. So let's say his name is something like, Dunpilgrolog Understone, and his human friends call him Pell for short. Dwarves in 4 Against Darkness have a handful of special traits, which we'll get into if and when it becomes relevant during gameplay. They start with either light armor, a shield, and a hand weapon, or heavy armor and a two-handed weapon. I did just say he's visibly armed, so I guess we have to go with the heavy armor and heavy weapon. In Zeros, magnetic metals are shunned for a mix of practical and superstitious reasons, so his armor and everything is mostly made of bronze. For the narrative flavor of it, we'll say his weapon is a polearm with mechanical joints, so it folds and can be easily carried in a sheath, but it can be flicked open and becomes a winged spear at a moment's notice. A dwarf starts with 3d6 gold pieces and 5 life points plus level, so 6 at first level. Backstory time. Tobias and Pell are old friends from back in another life when Tobias was part of a respected druidic order and Pell had affiliations with a dwarf tribe outside of Kingsholm.
That's a fascinating idea. The clash between tradition and progress can be a powerful theme to explore. It could be the encroachment of modern civilization, with its industrialization and disregard for the old ways, that threatened their homes and forced them to take action. This conflict could add depth to their characters and motivations.
For years, the growing city, with its gears and smoke and stench, pushed into the Barrow Valley region, chopping down trees and poisoning rivers. Pell's tribe and Tobias' order kept moving to stay ahead of it until, after years of this, it felt like they were living on the run. Slowly but surely, more druids and tribesmen splintered away, giving up living like hunted animals and venturing into civilization to live a new sort of life their friends and family knew nothing about. It was like a war of attrition. Eventually, there was nowhere left to run. The awful realization came for Tobias and Pell and the other holdouts that this wasn't a war they could win. The enemy wasn't just Kingsholm. The mad new world of wheels and steam and arcane scientific theories was everywhere. They finally did what they had scoffed at other people for doing. They gave up the old ways and joined civilization. There was probably some big, dramatic event at this turning point, which we'd worry about developing if we wanted more backstory for these two, but there's already too much as it is. Anyway, once they were living in Kingsholm, Tobias and Pell quickly realized they needed to let go of who they had been before and reluctantly get jobs. They had been revered figures in another society, which no longer existed, but in this new society, they were on the bottom rung of the ladder and had to figure out which of their skills were marketable. In another life, they had been warriors. They were both strong and both knew how to fight. They started a mercenary band, so their strength could be turned into income.
That makes sense. They wouldn't just start a company unless they were confident in their abilities and skills, after all. Plus, working together again would remind them of what they used to have, which may make them feel nostalgic and motivate them to try harder to succeed this time around.
The group is called the Dancing Owlbear, in reference to a symbol shared by Tobias' druidic order and Pell's nature-revering tribe. They're not the best mercenary band in the world, but they do decent work. They have something of a reputation now, even if that's only inside Kingsholm. And even if the reputation is for being affordable and not asking many questions.
Yes, learning and growing is such an essential element of any compelling narrative arc. And these two seem like perfect candidates for that kind of development.
Is Jennifer Dwadna connected somehow to this backstory, or is she more of a recent hire?
She's a more recent hire.
The Dancing Owlbear mainly does grunt work, and for the most part, they're just hired muscle. Security for trade caravans leaving the city, bodyguarding, occasional small-scale contracts with the Kingsholm Watch for its special operations where they need more blades, etc. So hiring Jennifer Duadna added a whole new skill set to the group and opened up new types of jobs they could take. The dancing owlbear is now capable of stealth, cleverness, observation, etc. Duadna brings a lot to the table for the mercenaries, and it doesn't escape her that, at this point, they basically need her. The three sit with fresh mugs of ale in their hands, deposited in front of them by a barmaid who's already pushing a way through the crowd, returning to the taps to refill her tray. Duadna raises her mug and, with a sarcastic grin, offers a toast to the tired, thirsty cleric and dwarf. She says... What does she say?
Still in the first tavern, surrounded by dead quest givers.
That's awesome. It gets a chuckle from Pell, but Tobias nods somberly as if he wasn't paying enough attention to detect the dry sarcasm in her voice. They all take a pull from their mugs. The door to the street opens, and for a moment the heavy rain is audible over the drone of conversations inside. Our character's table has line of sight at the door, so they can see the figure who is stepping slowly into the tavern. Who walks in?
An elderly tiefling.
Ooh, interesting. A tiefling is like a humanoid demon thing, right? We'll have to put our own spin on what they actually are if it becomes important. But for now, it's just for flavor anyway. We've never had a tiefling in a Zero story before, so I think it's fair to say they're a somewhat rare sight. In fact, many of the patrons of the Wobbly Raven probably don't know what this guy is. He attracts a few curious stares as he slowly crosses the room. Magic and interdimensional travel are established facts of life in Cirrus, though, so people are desensitized to some degree to weirdness. The common slang for a being like this is puka. That's a catch-all term meaning something which isn't human, but beyond that, who knows? I doubt people are more than vaguely interested in this robed, horned creature stepping out of the rain. Tobias, Pell, and Duadna watch the elderly humanoid demon thing approach, and can tell this stranger is specifically coming to their table before he actually gets there. The puka stops at the table, looking at Tobias and the others with an appraising expression. Tobias and Pell stare back, not speaking either. Duadna looks back and forth between them, wondering who will be the first to say something. After a pause, the tiefling clears his throat. He says, "What?"
He says, "How about this weather?" While sweating profusely.
Sweating profusely. So he's very tense and nervous. Maybe he's out of his element here. This tavern is on the seedy side, so maybe he's dressed in nice clothes. A very expensive waterproof cloak, and looks like he absolutely doesn't belong in this neighborhood. Pell and Tobias must be staring because they're sizing him up, trying to imagine what a person like this might be doing here. The puka clears his throat and says, "How about this weather?" Tobias gives him a flat look. He says, "I doubt you're here to buy ale. Someone in those clothes would only come to a place like this looking to hire muscle. So, is that what you're after?" The puka nods his horned head. "I've heard your mercenary band is the best." Duadna smirks and kicks Tobias under the table. "You must be doing something right," she mutters. Pell pipes up. "You've heard correctly. We're the best mercs money can buy. Emphasis on the money." Duadna says, "I highly approve of that." The puka says, "The job I have for you should be very quick and easy work for such experts." Tobias says, "We'll take it." Pell and Duadna glance at him in surprise. The puka raises a bushy eyebrow. "You don't need to know what it is first?" Tobias shrugs. "Nope." The puka chuckles. "I admire your work ethic." Duadna lifts her hands. "Hold on. Despite my captain's laconic bravery, I want to know what this job is before I agree to do it. And more to the point, what it pays." The puka looks at her. "I need to go into certain ruins, and I need bodyguards. I can pay well. What I'm seeking in the ruins is my own business." Pell says, "What you're seeking there may be your own business, but why you'll need bodyguards? is very much our business. The Puka glances at Pell for protection. Pell rolls his eyes. Yes, but why do you think you'll need protection? The Puka says, these ruins have been standing vacant in the jungle for years and years. Who knows what has infested them in all that time? It would take an old fool to wander in alone, and I am no old fool. Tobias leans over the table and brings his friends into a huddle. He whispers, we should take this job. Anyone rich enough to dress like that can make it worth our while. And anyone so lacking in sense as to wear those clothes here really does need bodyguards. I think he's telling us the truth. This might be so simple we three could do it alone, without needing to call up the rest. Wouldn't the band be pleased with the first payday in a while, without having to do anything? Pell nods and says, true. Duatna nods as well. Tobias raises his head out of the huddle and speaks to the Puka. We'll do this job. What ruins are we going to? And what is your name? The Puka says, call me. Call him what?
Well, he's a Bladesinger wizard.
Ooh, interesting. That's only a title, though, so I take it he doesn't give his actual name here. Also, I don't want to just recycle that term, so let's alter it. Blade. Dagger. Singer. Muse. Call me Dagger Muse, the Puka says, if you need to call me anything. That's as close to my real name as I'll be giving you, because I don't see any reason that you need it. A wizard in 4 Against Darkness is the quintessential glass cannon. They can do significant things in a fight with magic, but they also have very few life points and need to be protected by the stronger members of the party. This character, being a wizard, makes perfect sense. A wizard gets 2 spells baseline plus 1 per level, so a first level wizard has 3. We'll get into how the magic works during gameplay when it comes up, but in a nutshell, spells can be chosen from a list, and each one a wizard has represents a prepared spell which can be used once per game. They can be different, or they can be copies of the same spell. It's at the player's discretion. A wizard cannot wear armor, and is only allowed a light weapon for melee and a sling for ranged combat. A wizard's starting equipment is a light weapon, a spellbook, and writing implements. Their starting wealth is potentially higher than the other classes at 46 gold pieces, but their life points are lower at 2 plus 1 per level, so a starting wizard has 3 life. Dagger Muse continues talking. As for the ruins we're going to, I assume you've heard of Grick-Thalak. Tobias nods. Yes, the Ixian ruins in the Sunwaki Mountains. Dagger Muse nods back. We're going to a particular set of ruins near the larger Grick-Thalak complex. Tobias nods. We accept, Dagger Muse. We'll leave as soon as the rain stops. If Grick-Thalak lives up to its reputation, we already have our work cut out for us, and there's no need for us to leave wet corpses on top of everything else. The 4AD core game doesn't have any overland travel rules, so we'll hand wave the travel, and just say they make it where they're going without any issue. They leave King's Home after the rain stops, and the dark clouds covering the stars aren't sizzling with red lightning anymore. Storms on Ceros can be a major threat because some of them aren't regular storms. Above the poles of the world, north and south, geomagnetic storms constantly swirl, and sometimes bits of those geomagnetic outpourings break off and drift from the poles down to the equator, which is where all known civilization exists on Ceros. Because things are safe and settled there, in comparison. High mountains, like the Sunwaki Mountains north of King's Home, provide a buffer it's rare for polar magnetic storms to cross. Heading into the mountains themselves, makes it more likely travelers will encounter fringe storm effects, hence being extra careful about the weather. Dwarves are naturally immune to the more subtle magnetic effects of the storms, but humans and other beings aren't. So, before they head into the mountains, they all bundle up in scarves and face wrappings made from special cloth that contains non-magnetic metal threads. Some silver, some copper, etc. They all look like fancy mummies, with these wraps covering every bit of exposed skin. The idea is this provides something like a wearable Faraday cage, and it's doubtful this pseudo-scientific protection actually does much, but at least they feel safer from the constant threat of having their blood magnetized in their bodies and shredding their brains from the inside. As they travel, the silent clouds overhead gradually clear, and the night sky comes into view. This Cerosian sky is filled with nebulae, which are gaseous clouds hanging in space illuminated by the light of nearby stars. The names of the major nebulae are Stardust Veil, or simply the Veil, and the Ethereal Cascade, or the Cascade. Pre-dawn eventually comes as the travelers are getting into the jagged Sunwaki foothills, and the gray gloom on the horizon washes out the stars and nebulae. They keep going into the trees and hills, and can't see the actual horizon anymore by the time sunrise happens and turns the sky blue. It's mid-morning when they reach their destination. The specific ruins Dagamuse leads the way to are separate from the main Greek-Thalic ruins in the mountains above. These ones are hidden in the foothills, amid thick trees and vegetation. They reach the yawning entrance, a huge stone archway leading into blackness. It doesn't matter that a sunny day is starting outside. The dungeon is pitch black. In 4 AD, we set a marching order for our characters, which won't matter in open rooms, but will have an effect in corridors when we assume the characters don't have space to spread out, and will influence things like range attacks, who enters immediately first, etc. We can change it at any time, so whatever we decide right now isn't the permanent decision. Tobias and Pell take point, putting Dagamuse in the rear with Duadna beside him. Duadna says, "Stay close to me." Tobias glances back at the wizard and says, "You may be financing this expedition, but I'm the one who has to keep us all alive. Do exactly what I say. If something happens to me, do exactly what Pell says. Clear?" Dagamuse says, "Yes, clear."
He is an archaeologist as well as a wizard. He notices there is something significant in the sculptures around the archway and gets excited.
Ooh, interesting. It would make sense that there's something around the entrance which relates to what this place is and why it was made. This is when we can make a connection back to the story seed we started with, where a holy relic was stolen. Let's say this was a temple. In Dagamuse sees references to a particular god. What god is it?
Antacid.
This is the Temple of Antacid. Something is going on with the stolen relic of Antacid. That joke is almost worthy of Terry Pratchett, and it completely fits with the overall vibe we try to achieve with Zero Stories, which is vaudeville software running on Discworld hardware. I guess we need something about what the god Antacid was believed to be like. These ruins are Ixion, which everybody knows was a global dwarf empire that fell long before the modern day. Pell hears Antacid and makes the connection to lore he knows, passed down by shamans and elders in his tribe. He says Dagamuse must have dragged them all here seeking the lost tablets of Antacid, which are written in unknown runes, and if they could be translated, would supposedly reveal secrets about how the gods originally shaped the world. But the tablets themselves are widely regarded as a myth or fairy tale. Pell doubts they exist at all. Tobias says, "I don't care if the wizard is here seeking the Pied Piper's flute, as long as we get paid at the end of the day." With that rousing speech from their leader, they march beneath the high, crumbling archway and enter the dungeon. Dungeons are dark, In Zero's world building, dwarves have infravision and can see in pitch darkness, but nobody else can, which fits perfectly with the rules of 4AD. A party must have at least one lantern, and it must be assigned to a specific character. While carrying the lantern, that character cannot use a bow or other two-handed weapon, or carry a shield. If the character carrying the lantern falls somehow in the dungeon, someone else must pick it up. We'll assign the lantern to Duadna, since she wouldn't be using a shield or two-handed weapon anyway. The lantern flares on, and several rats scurry out of the light as the entrance room is illuminated. I think we'll end episode 1 there. We developed our party in this situation, and got our characters to the dungeon entrance room. They can start the actual delve in episode 2.
Absolutely. That's a great way to create tension and keep the audience engaged. Ending episode 1 with the characters entering the dungeon sets the stage for an exciting adventure in episode 2. It leaves the viewer eager to see what lies ahead and how our brave heroes will navigate the challenges within. We have a slow zoom out from the characters' faces, emphasizing the danger and uncertainty before them. There's a voiceover of the narrator saying something like, "Stay tuned for the next episode, where the stakes are higher than ever before."
Stay tuned for the next episode, where the stakes are higher than ever before.